Hello, my name is Suzanne Johnson. I'm a clinical therapist in Clinton Township, Michigan. One of the missions I feel I have in life is to help motivate people to eat healthier. I really feel that to have healthy emotions, that you need to be eating healthy and improve your physical health. To follow up my last video I posted about sugar being a poison in the long run, I want to discuss three more recent videos about how harmful sugar is that are on YouTube. And I make some reflections. I'm going to play some clips from these videos and state some important points that are made in them. The first one I want to talk about was done by Dr. Ekberg. He's a holistic chiropractor. It was posted on November 18, 2019. And the title of the video is really relevant to this whole talk. It's the top 10 ways sugar addiction actually destroys your brain and makes you fat and senile. So he starts out by talking about Nancy Appletons' study on sugar. She's a nutritionist that wrote about sugar and started talking about it in the late 1970s. She passed in 2019, but she wrote the book called Lick the Sugar Habit, Sugar by Suicide, and Killer Colas, The Hard Truth About Soft Drinks. She listed 146 peer-reviewed sources diseases that are partly caused by sugar. And I'm going to share those too, because I think that was helpful getting the point across. So here you can see the 146 reasons why sugar is ruining your health. I'll just look at a few of them. Sugar leads to chromium deficiency. Sugar malabsorption is frequent in patients with functional bowel disease. Sugar can cause asthma, arthritis, varicose veins. So she goes on for 146 of these. And then I checked out her resources, and she's got a lot of resources here. They look like from legitimate studies, such as this one here, number 8, effects of diets high in simple sugars on urinary chromium losses. And she has a lot of resources here, 146 of those too. So next I want to share his summary of these harmful effects of sugar. Number 1, because sugar doesn't have any nutrition, it causes malnourishment because it's got to use the nutrients that's already in the body and causing nutritional deficiencies. And that really is very serious because our body can't function properly when it doesn't have enough nutrition. Number 2, it causes mineral deficiencies in 3 different ways. 1, sugar decreases the absorption of the minerals that we already are taking in from our foods. 2, it increases the minerals being excreted out of the tissues that they're needed in. Think of osteoporosis. 3, to metabolize the sugar, you have to, again, pull the nutrients out of your body that you already have there. Okay, the third reason he listed is that sugar decreases immunity. As blood glucose goes up, white blood cell activity goes down. This way, the body can't fight pathogens such as viruses and other invaders as much. 4, sugar creates unstable blood sugar, which can cause irritability, lack of focus, poor attention span, cravings, fatigue, and negative moods. He said when the blood sugar is high, that's toxic to the brain. When the blood sugar is low, that's also toxic to the brain. 5, cancer really likes sugar. It's its preferred food. Other cells in your body prefer fat, but cancer really likes sugar. He says cancer cells thrive on glycolytic metabolism. Sorry if I said that wrong, but okay. Number 6, sugar causes a dysregulation hormones and transmitters, which is strongly related to ADHD, anxiety, PCOS, decreased sex drive, and depression. Number 7, sugar increases inflammation. Low-grade chronic inflammation is linked to every degenerative disease that we know of, including Alzheimer's, strokes, heart disease, and premature aging process. Number 8, It's related, sugar's related to non-alcoholic liver disease called NAFLD. It used to be we only saw it in people who were in their 60s, 70s, and older. Now we're seeing it even in teens and preteens. And he wondered if it's because we're giving infant formula with high fructose corn syrup. He explains that the kind of processed sugar is 50% glucose and 50% fructose. And fructose can only be metabolized by the liver. And he said, keep in mind, our liver is only 3 pounds. So where glucose can be used by all the cells, my body about 120 pounds, it can be used at all 120 pounds. But the fructose can only be used in the liver, that's 3 pounds. So it's like 40 times more concentrated in the liver than it is in the other kinds of sugar. So he says, quote, we are stuffing our liver in more ways than it can handle, end of quote. He called it like a force feeding. 9, sugar feeds pathogens, including yeast, fungus, bacteria, which we all have in our bodies. We need them to some extent. But the yeast, the sugar, which they like to feed on, tends to cause an overgrowth. And then the overgrowth leads to imbalance and to leaky gut. And the waste products of these pathogens is toxic. And they believe it's related to autoimmune diseases, which are on the rise a great deal at this point. He said it also affects cholesterol and the kind of diabetes that turns into dementia. And then he added 2 more, even though he said there was a ton of ways. And 11 is sugar increases wrinkles and saggy skin. And 12, the fact that sugar is addictive. Quote, sugar is one of the most addictive substances that we know of, end of quote. The next video I would like to discuss is by interview with Dr. Robert Lustig, very recent, at least to this point in time. Video was posted May 24, 2022. And the title is A Bitter Truth About Sugar, It's Poisoning You. And I'm just going to play a short clip. It's about some of the biochemistry. If it gets a little technical, you can just fast forward. So here goes.
Energy, but it's not food. So what's the definition of food? The answer is substrate that contributes either to the growth or burning of an organism. That's a fine definition. That goes right out of the dictionary. I got no problem with that definition. Substrate that contributes either to the growth or burning of an organism. Well, it turns out fructose actually inhibits growth. My colleague, Dr. Efrat Monsenigo Ornan at Hebrew University, Jerusalem, has just published 3 articles in Bone Research demonstrating how ultra-processed food, and specifically sugar, inhibits bone formation, bone accretion. It's one of the reasons why fracture rates are going up in the United States. And it actually hijacks normal growth because it increases risk for cancer. In either case, it's not contributing to growth. And burning. Now, people always say, well, sugar has got 4 calories per gram, therefore it contributes to burning. Garbage. Total complete trash. It contributes heat if you are burning it in a bomb calorimeter. That's true. But we are not bomb calorimeters. The way we make energy and harness energy is through a chemical in our cells called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That is how we capture energy from food and how we power the different processes inside cells. So anything that increases ATP would be food. Turns out fructose actually decreases ATP. It inhibits 3 separate enzymes involved in mitochondrial ATP generation. It inhibits AMP kinase, which is the fuel gauge on the liver cell. It inhibits ACAD-L, which is the first step on the way of taking fatty acids all the way through beta oxidation to make ATP. And lastly, it inhibits carnitine palmitoyl transferase 1, CPT1, which is the enzyme that regenerates carnitine, which is necessary. It's the shuttle mechanism that gets fatty acids into the mitochondria for burning in the first place. The sum total of which means that fructose, i.e. sugar, dietary sugar, actually inhibits burning. So if something inhibits growth and inhibits burning, is it a food? Answer.
No.
So hopefully you like that. Back to, there's some quotes from that video I like to say. He said that 80% of American people are metabolically deficient. And interesting enough, 40% of normal weight people are metabolically ill, whereas not all overweight people are metabolically ill. 20% are actually metabolically healthy. The next video I'd like to discuss is called The Bitter Truth About Sugar, how it's killing you. And it's David Perlmutter, I believe he's a neurologist, and Lewis Howells interviews him, January 24, 2022. Also, David Perlmutter is a 5 times New York Times best-selling author. He said, the foods that we eat fan the flames of inflammation by disrupting our metabolism. How much does this affect the brain? He said, quote, the brain is not tolerant to any significant degree to disruption of metabolism, what I call metabolic mayhem, because this disturbance of our metabolism sets the stage for inflammation, and that's the underlying cornerstone of brain degeneration. Alzheimer's is an inflammatory disease. Alzheimer's is the brain on fire. So we have to do everything we can to put the fire out. And we don't have a drug for Alzheimer's. So let me play a short video about where he talks about this in more detail.
For delivering a baby, it's that big of a deal.
What would you say, based on all the research you've done and also with these other doctors you've worked with, would be the 3 or 4 or 5 key things to eliminate or to do to prevent Alzheimer's or to start reversing it in the early stages?
So again, I think the most important thing is to realize that it begins a lot earlier than you think.
How early?
30 years before clinical symptoms.
Ooh.
That's what our peer-reviewed literature is showing.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why, because a study that appeared in the journal Neurology looked at created what's called an inflammatory composite score, and they looked at people. They did blood work, and they created a marker of their level of inflammation, and then they went back and evaluated them 28 years later, and they perfectly correlated who got Alzheimer's with how high their inflammation score was 28 years before.
Oh my gosh.
Now we've seen the same thing with waist circumference, 3 decades. We've seen the same thing with brain scans that look at glucose utilization, are predictive long before people began to forget their grandchildren's names. So the point is, when does it begin? Does it begin in the 30s? And I would submit it begins a lot earlier. That when we see adolescents now that are diabetic, that are obese and support significantly overweight, when we see teenagers in high school experiencing head trauma from contact sports, these are issues that are profound. We know that inflammation, the set point of inflammation, to some degree is determined before a child is even born, based upon the gut bacteria
Oh my gosh.
of the mother. And we know that, for example, how a child is even born, vaginal birth versus cesarean birth plays a huge role in determining that child's level of inflammation, immune function, risk for autoimmunity.
Okay, I'm going to stop at this point. So maybe you want to watch the whole video. I thought it's very good. But for my point, I think that's enough. He said, So to answer the question of the man that interviewed him, he said, quote, "We understand the worst thing for the brain is chronic inflammation. Anything we can do to target that is going to help. So that's where diet comes in, a diet with lower levels of refined carbohydrates." And then he added, of course, it would be important to have good sleep, good gut bacteria, and exercise. He said also, quote, "Diet is more than just macro and micronutrients, it's information. The foods we eat is speaking right now to your DNA, changing your gene expression," end of quote. He said more than 90% of our genes that code for health and longevity are under our control to some degree based on what we choose to do, such as diet, exercise, and sleep. And you mentioned the 2 million packaged foods sold in grocery stores, 70% have added sweetener, mostly high fructose corn syrup. So next I want to show you, related to Alzheimer's. This is some pictures from Daniel Amen's book about using the SPECT imaging. And this here is examples, of a healthy brain. It's nice and smooth. And then I want to compare it to images of a man who started to have Alzheimer's in his, it's hard to do, gotta get this right, 1970s. You see how all the holes? Here's one in the 1990s. So I bring that up because if you're thinking about eating healthier, really now is the time to start. The sooner you start, the better chance you have of not having dementia. But also, interesting enough, dementia, at least Alzheimer's, is much more frequent in highly industrial countries like ours than non-Western countries. And to show you proof of that, I want to share the screen with you from some findings from the World Health Organization. Excuse me, let me get out of this here. Sorry. Now here we have the World Health Rankings. I'm going to just go back a page. This is such an interesting site. They have 49 different causes of disease, and they show how they rate per country, and they're color coded. So this one I'm picking is Alzheimer's and dementia. And you see the color code is red is the highest, green is the second highest, purple third highest, and gray is the lowest. So you can see United States and Canada, Australia, we're very high. But I mean, I just assumed it was kind of more uniform around the world, but you can see it's clearly not. There's some countries that are much less. And they actually have rate how many people die per 100,000 by country here. So Finland is the highest, United Kingdom, then we're the 8th highest, still very high, because these are from 183 countries. But you compare our rate, 33.26, to Singapore, which is 0.43. And I figured out that we have 77 times more, a higher rate than Singapore does. And I don't know, obviously, nobody knows exactly what's the whole reason for that, but I'm guessing that processed foods, including sugar, is a part of that. So with that, I would like to just summarize. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope it gave you some food for thought and hopefully motivation to eat healthier and cut out sugar. And just artificial sweeteners is not a good substitute either. I thought it was, at least stevia, I thought it was natural. But there's research showing, using PubMed, if you want to look it up, for each of the artificial sweeteners that they are injurious to the liver. So it's just best not to use any of that. Okay, thank you very much, and have a good day.